Okay, we're going to start the City of Olivet Planning Community Design Commission for October 20th, 2022 in order. Brian, would you mind playing or acting as our interim secretary and calling the roll?
Absolutely. Member Daniel Rosenberg.
Present.
Member Richard Brophy.
Absolutely.
Vice Chairman Carol Wagner.
Absolutely.
Member Tim Spiegelglass.
Present.
Member Brian Lewis, present. Secretary Jody Rich
Absolutely.
and Chairman Robert Dragell.
Present. All right. Let it also be known that our city council liaison, council member Missy Waldman is in attendance, as well as our Carlos Trejo, City of Olivet's Planning Community Development Department's director, Don Doty, senior planner, and Bridget Waters, administrative assistant. Carlos, is there anybody else online? Okay, good. All right. Okay, so just to kind of go over procedures, I know people who have been here before, know the drill, and we appreciate it. But just to give everybody an idea how we do things, there will be a public comments. These are for items that are not on the agenda item. That's usually, it's at the beginning. And if you do have a public comment related to something that's not on the agenda, please raise your hand or, notify us on the Zoom. I don't believe, Carlos, you said nobody is on there? Good. And if you do, please, come up to the podium and state your name and address and try to keep your comments brief and to the point. That would be great, just to respect everybody's time and commitments that we all have. And to make sure everybody's opinions get heard, we do ask everybody to limit their comments to the podium to no more than 3 minutes. Okay. Just to give everybody a general idea of how we do things, for agenda items, there'll be a report given by either Carlos or Dawn. And then there'll be discussion items with members of the commission, that might have particular questions for Dawn or for Carlos. At that point in time, we typically bring on the petitioner and have some further discussions. And then we'll ask for public comments related to that agenda item. So same rules apply. You raise your hand, let us know. We'll call for it and we'll call you up to the podium. And please remember to state your name and address for the record and keep the comments short, concise, brief, and try to be no more than 3 minutes. That'd be great. All right. That being said, we'll move on to whether there are any public comments for items not on the agenda. See none in the audience. Carlos, is there anybody on?
There is nobody online.
Okay.
Chairman, I do want to note just a public comment
Yeah.
regarding the relocation of the Boo Bash Harvest Festival. It will not be at the community center. It will be at Stacy Park. Just trying to make sure everybody gets the word out.
Oh, good.
That it has been relocated to Stacy Park for this year.
Why?
Because the project is done enough to be able to. Because the park is done enough to be able to enjoy it with the citizens, and we just didn't know where that timing was going to be. So God blesses us all, and you're all going to be able to enjoy some of the new amenities at Stacy Park.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
Great.
Yeah.
All right. So we'll move on to item number 4, consent business. And this is item A, 67 Stony Side Lane. Carlos?
Chairman, before you received in your packet the petition plans for a new single family home at 67 Stony Side Lane. This petition initially came in April. And since then, the petitioner's been working with the subdivision to go through their review process. Their review process is significantly more stringent than the city's review process as it's applied to the community as a whole. That being said, the whole plan set changed from where the developer started. You see that before you. It far exceeds the city's residential guideline requirements, along with the city's height restrictions. It's well below the 35-foot, given the subdivision's more stringent indenture. It's been reviewed for its community design review and for its concept stormwater management plan. And staff is recommending the commission consider the petition as a consent item and approve, subject to the staff regulations noted in there. The petitioner and his representatives are here. Be glad to answer any specific questions or go through any details.
Does anybody have any questions or comments for Carlos? No, none, seeing none. I'm not sure we really need the petitioner to come up and unless there's a particular question that any of the commission members have for the petitioner. Seeing none, do I hear a motion?
I'll make a motion.
Go ahead, Brian.
Motion to approve the petition for a community design and concept stormwater management plan review. For a new single-family home at 67 Stony Side Lane is presented in the memorandum from the Department of Planning and Community Development dated October 20th, 2022, subject to any staff conditions noted therein.
Motion's been made. Do I hear a second?
Second.
And seconded. Carlos, should you please call the vote?
Yes, sir. 1 second. On the motion, Commissioner Rosenberg. Approved. Commissioner Spiegelglass. Approved. Commissioner Lewis
Approved.
and Chairman Dragell.
Approved.
The motion passes 4-0. Thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you. Okay, we'll move on to item 5, new business. And it's item A, which is the ordinance amending the Olivet Municipal Code by enacting a new chapter 450 regulating medical marijuana facilities. Carl?
Chairman, I was absent at the previous commission meeting, and I know there was some discussion, continued discussion on the draft ordinance, along with some review of various maps within the separation distance. After consulting with Don and going through the meeting video, it looked like there were a couple of items that were discussed, and I'm here to just to try to address some of what's been incorporated within the draft before you tonight. One is that we did not include the PA district as part of any buffering requirements in that process in there. Now, there is a 750-foot buffer required for residentially zoned properties. So that includes all the PASF, the PASF, the PSFR, I believe it is, and the SR district in there. So those would be required. With that application, approximately 4 parcels would still be probable for those uses. Of those 4, 2 are owner occupied, and 1 is owned by St. Louis County, and then 1 is a vacant, undeveloped parcel. But it's pretty narrow and small, and would have some limitations, but again, anything is possible. But that's what it would permit, and I think those were illustrated in the maps Don had put together at the previous meeting. These 2 here off of Bauer are owner occupied. Both of them do very well in terms of their sales tax revenue. So we hope that they would continue as residents and owners in the city of Olivet. This is the county parcel, which is the Humane Society along with Vector Control. And then this parcel here off of the street called Walters Way. It is an undeveloped parcel, but there are some limitations, and that kind of reflects why it's still undeveloped in the middle of a pretty well-developed community. So that would be reflective of what those setbacks. There are no changes regarding to the state standards. The state set maximum standards. No community can go above and exceed the 1,000-foot from churches, daycares, and places of schools. Did not change that. Right now, under the current conditions, we apply the same 1,000. We would maintain the same 1,000 in that process. There was some confusion. I just want to clarify that we're not changing or minimum reducing the standards that the state has adopted in those setbacks. Other items that were in there were there was discussion about hours of operation.
Carlos, I have a question
Yes,
about
sir.
that, just real quick. If there was a daycare facility or kids were, there was some sort of program at the new community center, would that now restrict?
No, it only applies, if I'm correct, in terms of the state standards to existing. That term, and there, I'd have to probably get more of a legal clarification on there.
But if there was like an after school, type of a program there with.
Again, it would apply to an existing facility. Is what
Okay.
is the term that's used in the state statutes. I'd have to get some type of legal clarification on that.
May I point out, though, that the Miriam School, which is existing, is just north of the community center, and therefore these buffers would already really cover that. So it would be directly, so it's between that church and on the far left-hand side. So if you can see Carlos's mouse there, the Miriam School is the top green box. And
There we go.
this is Miriam and this is the church.
Okay.
Something. Lutheran.
Yeah.
So, and Warson, the community center, the new one will be just between those.
This,
So covered.
Isn't it? I thought it's on the north side.
It's on the
No.
north side.
It wouldn't be on the north
The
side of
south side
Miriam.
is the Appleseed.
It wouldn't be, it would be on the north side of Miriam?
Yes.
It would stretch further, then it might knock out those two.
And again, it's something I'd have to seek some legal clarification. The term used in the statutes is existing. So if the current community center, there's that potential they were operating. And they have in the past a senior daycare facility that those measurements would be taken from there.
It would be existing at the time of the application, correct? So if there was a
Correct.
daycare at the time of the application, then that buffer would apply.
Okay. Okay.
random question, and probably doesn't need to be in here, but I'm curious on like boundary of other cities. How does that get applied? It fit within our guidelines for, 1,000 feet, but not in all of that, but across, someplace else, it was 20 feet away.
It goes up both ways. The state standards are going to apply regardless of jurisdiction.
Okay,
The residential buffer that would be applied by the city of Olivet would apply to properties within the city of Olivet. So in a case where if
it was on Warsing and across the street,
correct, they may not be sensitive to that residential buffer. And
Okay,
they're-
I'm just curious.
The same thing though would be, and though it's rare because we don't, well, we do have properties that they are already identified. Would be if a property was qualified on Gilman Rock Island Industrial Boulevard, because there are residential properties to the north and an unincorporated pocket of Elmwood Park. In there, whether we would apply that same standard or not, I don't know the answer to that.
I'm just curious. Yeah, it doesn't apply here. It was more curious.
It's a good question. I just.
Included MICDS at the bottom, since that is a state, that's a school and the state buffer would apply. However, U City, Ladue, the unincorporated section, Overland, Creve Coeur, all of those municipalities that border us, it's possible that whatever restrictions or lack of restrictions would affect our residential properties.
Okay. Thanks.
The other item that was discussed was hours of operation. And I provided you a table of various hours of operation that was submitted earlier within the discussion process. And the city seemed to be pretty much in line with what other communities had. There were several that allowed 7 days a week as opposed to the 16 a day on the weekend. Most started at 8 o'clock. The ending hours varied. There was nothing in the state statutes that regulated the hours of operation.
What do we currently have in our standard, just a refreshment?
I believe what's proposed, bear with me 1 second. AM to 7 o'clock PM, Monday through Saturday. And that applies to all facilities. that's one of the things I should note on the table. I did break them down because they were communities that applied a different set of standards to dispensaries and one to a testing facility as opposed to manufacturing cultivation.
Oh, that's, okay, that's interesting, because cultivation facility, I think we talked about this, someone may need to be there in the middle of the night to move things, so.
For sure.
And I saw what you talked about, we can forward an amendment
Mhm.
to this, okay.
Current hours of the current shop that's applied to an hour.
Pardon?
Is that the current hours? Is that the current hours for the current CBD shop that's at Olive Price?
I'm not familiar with their hours.
Okay.
Sorry.
Anybody want to have any further discussion on the hours?
I
remember- Tim,
I think it should be open later and on Sundays. I don't see a reason why it can't be open on Sundays.
Yeah, for dispensaries, absolutely.
Yeah.
I think 7, I'm, in terms of the hours, and I'm happy to make an amendment when it comes time to it, but. My thought is, 8 to 8 or 8 to 10, but 7 days a week, it doesn't mean someone's going to be, right? But for the manufacturing, if they are able to meet all these guidelines, which we're talking about 4 parcels of land here, right? for cultivation, I assume they want to be 4 hours a day, and I guess operation means they have staff on site doing something.
Right, and I think
these-
that's up
these-
to them.
These restrictions are not associated with the dispensaries.
Agreed. No, but that's my point is like, if somebody who is at cultivation manufacturing wanted to grab one of those 4 parcels and it
Yeah.
actually worked. My thought is their business, they can't just leave at 6 p.m. Is my assumption. So I wouldn't put any regulation on them personally.
Right, but it's restricted for the dispensaries.
Yes.
Chairman.
Yeah.
Regarding council member Waldman's inquiry, based on Google, it says the hours of operation for the CBD Phantom are from 8 a.m. to 10 p.m. And that is 7 days a week.
But I don't think is that technically a dispensary because they're not selling? like-
No, it's not a
Yeah, that's why
dispensary.
my
This
point
is
is
a
it's-
different,
it's
I'm not sure
CBD 's
what that
different.
inquiry.
Not, well,
So.
not yet, but.
Okay, well, I guess we'll have some further discussion on that after. Go ahead, Carlos. Sorry to interrupt.
No problem. I think those were the 3 primary items from the commission discussions. And then through public comments, there was some inquiries regarding the clarification on that buffer and making sure that the city wasn't trying to impose standards that were less stringent than the state. And then, a discussion of the actual the distance of the residential buffer. And again, what's being drafted here tonight is 750 feet. There was comments again regarding about regulations of odor. We maintain the draft as is. And note that, the city still requires a special permit. The special permit also initiates site plan review, so you can look at adverse impacts on surrounding properties. And that's what the intent of the site plan review procedure isn't. And then the ordinance would require the review, the submission and review of the filtration and ventilation systems and an outdoor mitigation plan. And finally, there was comments regarding public notification in the city's process in there. And I think it's a good comment in there. And I'd urge the city or our liaison to talk to the council on a policy wise of this more holistically. It's not being specific to just this type of use in there, and encourage, our communications manager to be involved in there. Now, the commission does have authority and sets policies in terms of how we also do notifications. And that might be something if the council doesn't take on that, we talk internally in a future work session. But ultimately, it should be more of a policy issue on the council side. There is a ordinance requirement regarding notification for text amendments, zoning changes, and things that's codified in the code. And that requires a minimal, I believe it's 185 foot notification. Now, the policy, again, not, the procedure for the commission has always been 300 foot or an entire subdivision if you're coming in from an entry or it has like a cul-de-sac type of design, and has given staff some flexibility to expand that, but not to reduce it in any way. So The other thing is, capitalizing on other social media type of venues, and we try to do that in there working with the communications manager, who can always probably do a better job. But a lot of information is directed to her to distribute.
About the newsletter.
The newsletter is another media that we use for putting information. However, it's a quarterly newsletter, so usually it's after explaining something that's in there. There are possibilities to put things in advance, but the way the sequence works, you would need to know, a month. It'd be hard for me to predict in a month in advance what was coming up before the commission, or what the result might have been, or whether we would hold something till after the newsletter publication. It's possible. So another example is usually if I have a deadline to submit an article to the quarterly newsletter. And then usually there's about 3 weeks of all the department's articles being combined, edited, and then a final draft is put in, and then there's a week that it's distributed. So usually by the time it hits mailbox, you have at least 4 weeks that have gone by from where it was originally drafted. And I don't know that answers, but
I'm just trying to think of a way to get it out to, to everybody. In a format that most people, it doesn't rely just on the website or computer notice.
And it sounds like a separate session might be worthwhile, because I also think like I get the text alerts and the emails, but I don't know if people know to sign up for those. So maybe things like at the boot bash, you can have a sign up thing, or at schools, you can have a sign up thing. There's just, and I think it's a separate conversation, but there are lots of ways to attack this.
and towards the end, and not to burst Don's balloon, because she's going to have a really good follow-up to some demographic information for all of that. But is it 1 in 4, or is it residents speak another language besides English?
Wow.
And probably 1 out of every 8, English is not their primary language. And we're trying to break down into the data, a majority of those whose primary language is not English is Asian, but that is a large demographic within itself. And so we're trying to dig into, and we're doing that in an effort to help the city council as it starts looking at its diversity, inclusion, and equity procedures or processes. And then as we start going into the comprehensive plan, how do we better, provide information to our residents, and then for us, how we also distribute, our information.
The comprehensive plan will be a great opportunity for us to reach out to the community in general and communicate more. However, it will also help us adapt our communications going forward. I'm looking forward to using much more, our online tools. We have a lot of things with ArcGIS that we're not currently utilizing that we could, if, it's like always if you had time, but there's a lot of opportunity there. We want to focus our energy and know where the energy needs to go. So I think that's why they've asked me to look into the demographics so closely, because we want to be, conscious with where we're putting our.
It's a real challenge, trying to, use these new modern technologies, but then also we have an aging population that
Doesn't want anything to do. Maybe.
yes, that needs old school, kind of paper.
And door knocking will be part of the comprehensive plan. It kind of gets us out more than than we would be normally.
Right. Okay.
So, Chairman, that
pushing
provides an
buttons.
overview of what we heard and listened to from the previous meeting. You have the version dated today, October 20th, and it would be up to the commission to determine if it's ready to take action.
Well, I think we want to have some further discussion, but should we take on some public comments before we do that? I think that might be appropriate. So if there's any public comments related to this item, please raise your hand and let us know. Come on.
I also want to mention that we've looked at yard signs on ingress and egress points of subdivisions. Whenever we send out the notifications, I have all the subdivision trustees mapped. And so we try to make sure that for any given subdivision that the trustees are on that mailing list. So that's kind of like, one more checklist. It's and like Carlos said, we only add. We always send it to every resident within that 300 foot radius, including the property. But we add just any impacted streets and the trustees. Yard signs, I do want us to consider that.
That is the simplest, cheapest, and the easiest way to get information. About the bonds. People buy, they're not doing it.
Use your
What
microphone.
language is gonna be on one side of the sign and what's on the other. That's my opinion.
I'd like to see, besides using your microphone, I would like to see a
I'm sorry.
QR code with the translation. So
Just waiting.
You're ready for the QR.
Raphael Timanson, 809 Newcastle Drive. First of all, I just want to thank everyone for kind of working on this. I think it's really nice how everyone's trying to kind of get us to the same place. I have one concern on the proposal, which is about the odor. It's too bad Mr. Martin's not here. I understand the logic of the special permit, but I've seen that it's very hard to kind of shut down places once there's odor, and it seems that we have places that have problems. And I think about Rock Hill, and I know at the last meeting, maybe it's 2 meetings ago, Mr. Martin said, "Oh, we fixed Rock Hill and that stuff." I was very hopeful, and I ended up driving by. I don't know if anyone else has driven by recently, but they still have a problem there. And I don't know if it's that their city council's not pulling the special permit or what's going on, but somehow we have another city that seems to have the same model, seems to have the same odor problem and hasn't fixed it. And I'm just a little bit nervous that we don't seem to really be, there is a provision in there. I'm not trying to say there's nothing in there, but you don't really seem to have any bite in that law. And I would think it would be better if we had a way that we could, if there's a reasonable amount, an unreasonable, I think it's phrased as any reasonable person would detect odor or something like that, that if they pass that threshold, maybe the default could be the place has to shut down until things are fixed or something like that. But at any rate, what I see is I see another city that seems to have similar problems. It hasn't gotten fixed. I don't know why it hasn't gotten fixed. But somehow the special permit's supposed to be enough, and it doesn't seem like it at least worked in that instance. And I wish I knew why it worked here and it hasn't worked there. So that's my one concern left over on this stuff.
Very good. Thanks for.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
I'm Kate Hellman at 800 North Price. Overall, I'm really happy with everything that's in this and really grateful for the collaboration and work that we've been able to do together. I had a question about the hours of operation that I don't know the answer to. If the hours of operation only apply to the public or if they apply to the employees, it seems to me that that piece of clarification might be kind of the linchpin almost of the hours of operation, especially as it comes to the cultivation, the cultivation facilities that likely would have people working there. And I don't know the answer.
The cultivation, general public doesn't go to the cultivation.
So that might be why.
That's why it's 24/7 because, or could be as a proposal,
Yeah.
because people are never going there to buy. You cannot buy there. It's not a
Right.
dispensary. It's manufacturing, so it's only.
But I would imagine you would still have people who aren't actively employed there who would come to the business for one reason or another, whether they're working with an outside business, if they're taking the product from them or, that,
Delivery truck, you mean, or something like that.
yeah.
Yeah, like restaurants and things like that too, that would typically have,
Yeah, but you're. right,
Other people coming that aren't
Transportation has their own
actively
regulations.
employed by that.
Drivers can, yeah.
And then the other piece with the dispensaries, I know there was a lot of communication amongst this group around crime and safety concerns related to dispensaries. And I just think that piece might be more heightened on the weekends. This is completely anecdotal, but I just think, with the concern around safety, if there's a big concern about the safety and crime piece around dispensaries, that maybe that ought to be what informs more of the setting of the hours of operation, if they're considered separately from the manufacturing, cultivation, and testing facilities. But again, just questions. Thank you.
Public comments? Seeing none, we'll check to see if, Carlos, is there anybody online?
Chairman, we have two additional people online. If anybody has any comments that they'd like to provide to the proposed text amendment, if you can click the raise your hand, it's usually at the bottom center of your Zoom window. Hey, Chairman, I see none.
Okay,
Uh,
last call for everybody in the audience, just given a chance, in case you had second thoughts. Seeing none, okay, so let's have some discussions. I think let's start off with, are we all good with the residential buffer as it stands? Yeah, I think so. I think so. Okay, this state distance requirements, we discussed that, and I think we're good. We're not altering those state distance requirements. And then I think we're really kind of down to the hours of operation. I kind of like to just see how the odor controls is written up, that we have. And then the public notification. I'm not sure if there's anything else we can add. No, okay.
I think that's a future discussion. But yeah.
Because right now,
For this or overall. Conversation should go to council. And it really is already having some brief discussions.
Microphone missing.
I'm sorry. I'm guilty of doing that to others, so please feel free to do that to me. The council is beginning their discussions with regards to a policy. I mean, several years ago, we hired a communications, manager to begin to do better in outreach, with Twitter, Facebook, a lot of things electronic already. Sign up for civils, whatever we are called. But at the same time, recognizing some may not connect electronically. It is becoming few far in between, not electronically. So there already really has been that discussion briefly on yard signs. Because we already do that for coffee for the mayor, coffee for a cop, coffee with a cop. Things of that nature. And like the ideas of staff, put a QR code in there for someone to go up there to read it in their language if they need. So that really is, in my opinion, already with us. I don't know if that really needs to be
I understand.
here.
Totally good.
Yeah.
Totally
To
good.
where what you get to focus on is most important.
Yeah. No, I appreciate it. Yeah. And just making sure we're covering everything before we move on. Good. Okay, so hours of operation. We currently have 8 to 7. Is that correct, Carlos?
Yes, sir.
6 days a week.
I would propose 7 days a week, 8 to 8. I'll throw it out there.
I'd be okay with that.
Yeah. I understand the concern of safety. I think again, the police get to look at it. I think it's probably actually, I think the break-ins usually happen maybe off hours, but 8 seems like a nice middle ground versus 10.
I believe that break-ins have happened in St. Louis around at night. I don't think
Yeah.
they've tried during the day, but
That's what I
other areas they have done it during the day, for the record. Yeah, and I don't see any logical reason to restrict business on a Sunday. I mean, if it's for medical purposes, people need access. The more access, the better. So I would like to see it 7 days a week also.
Okay, I can get on board with that. Okay, so then, let's talk about the odor control. Carlos, can you pull up or just show me again where in the text amendment we discussed the odor issues?
Sure, 1 second.
I was flipping through that earlier
Bear with me because I
and
gotta-
did not do my homework, and I apologize.
I need to make sure I got this streamed.
John?
Odor.
And there you go. It should be under item F.
Thing is, I understand how difficult it is to control these odors and the little bits, and everything. But I'm wondering if we can say, we're a little bit more. We're not as, gosh, what's the word I'm using? I'm wondering if we can say something at the property line, there should be no. odor. Or at the outside the structures, but at the property line, there should be no. odor.
Only concern is in a dispensary, if you walk into a dispensary, you're gonna smell marijuana before you get into that. And you're gonna smell and if you're in a parcel with a property line that's big, you're gonna be inside. I guess it's way outside that property line, but you're gonna be able to smell it next door when you're walking by it,
Next to the suite,
next to whatever suite you're in.
but I'm talking about the property line. This is more protection for the residences. Carlos, what do you think about that?
What concerns, I have, again, we have within our ordinance a zero light spillover on resident, commercial property abutting residential.
Mhm.
And it's from an enforcement perspective, they're always difficult to try to enforce. And now light's a little bit easier because you can use it, it's more affordable. We have a measurable thing to take through on the odor controls and all that. It's not as versed to be able to tell you that our staff would be equipped to do that measurement, not to say that we couldn't, get educated about it and set for it. I know county provides services on some of those items. And there, I look at it in terms of if if you're applying a buffer, and what is the intent of the buffer? If we could do a zero lot line odor, do we need the buffer?
Okay, I'm listening. Yeah, that's interesting.
And I understand the concerns and all that, but that or is the zero odor at the 750 foot mark? A building can be situated anywhere within the site in the parcel. So if if the building was, and there's an issue in the Indian Meadows subdivision that we have a lot. They have a lot of one-car garages, but when the houses were built, the garage was built like within 5 feet of the property line. So they're limited in terms of being able to expand and enclose or add a 2-car garage. And it impacts the value of those properties. They have plenty of space on the opposite side, but they have no space on one end in there. And I go use that as an analogy because again, in the industrial park, you have a very a variety of different sizes of parcel, but the building placement can be anywhere around in there. And again, it's up to a purchaser to determine, hey, my building's closer to the street and I have a big backyard before it hits residential, so, I can handle that, or I can mitigate that. But it still brings into the question, then why have the 750? Is it another layer in there for security purposes? And that's reasonable too. It's just, I have to question of what the purpose is.
I agree, and I understand the language is vague, it's reasonable, but in talking to member with, I forget the lawyer's name, I apologize for this last name. And then Barbie mentioned like the challenges, even if you put cannot be detected or not detected, or this, it's also subjective. I don't think there's no teeth in it either way, and it's, if we read and understood. My understanding from the special permit is, at least according to what we were told, is we can pull it anytime for what we deem to be appropriate.
Yeah,
But it's
correct.
very difficult.
But it takes a cautious approach. too.
Of course, you don't just do willy-nilly,
In there. And-
but I understand the concern about the teeth of it, but I think I worry about swinging the pendulum too far the other way.
Just wanna, that reasonably detected adds a lot of leeway.
Mhm.
And so it's trying to, at some point, kind of, it's trying to not prevent what we got going on at, what's going on at, Rock Hill. Just- I'm wondering if we just need to have some place that states that there should be no odor detected at a certain distance.
And that being said, then to me, the magic number would be the 750. That's what the purpose is for.
Then you could definitely have a stronger odor outside the building. And then that takes
Well,
away the
but-
teeth of this reasonably detected outside the structure.
Correct. Or you maintain both. The intent is, again, provide some reasonable application to the structure. But in no case is it going to be reasonable after 750 feet. That makes
And again, I think the word reasonable and no is, again, how would you measure it? And reasonable is obviously subjective. What might be reasonable to you might be different than me versus the next person. So
Well, what would happen if St. Louis County came out?
County provides services where they could assist us with the measurement or have the means to order. The county would ultimately enforce the DNR standards. And again, I think those are, given facilities that exist at this time, they're not as stringent, take, for instance, the Rock Hill. If Rock Hill exists, but it's not in violation of a DNR standard, that's what the county is probably going to apply. Now, whether they have some additional mitigation standards, I don't know.
All the county's gonna ask for is a plan to show that you're doing something. That's what that no matter what that facility is, they're gonna ask for a plan of how you're attempting to do it, and all you have to do is they have to check off that box to say, hey, we did something with it.
this probably doesn't mean the same, but I was out in the city area, and the dump near there, driving probably a couple thousand feet away, and it was, smell it driving through. I look at that and go, what? No one wants that in their backyard, but how do you regulate all sections all the time? Because the first time somebody smells it at 750 feet, does that mean they're shut down?
Would think if you could smell it at 750 feet. then
But
you're-
on a certain day, when there's certain winds or
But
conditions.
then that should be, it would be reasonably detected outside the structure. That would be. Or should we say something, to the extent if any, are detected, shutdown of the operations will be required. So that they put in, the top of the line ventilation system, rather than doing business as usual. In some of these other facilities where they know they're leaking a little bit of odors out.
The complaint line that they have in Rock Hill also serves to collect, to substantiate the claim of odor and to collect that data over time. So they probably have a certain time period in which, it's necessary in order to substantiate the claim that they're, you know what I'm saying? Like, they can't just go off of, one person could call 1,000 times. It's not, but you have to build up your data of the complaints, I would assume as well. So there would be some kind of time frame of consideration, or if we would be more stringent and say, like, if anyone can, perceive that smell within 750 feet on any given day, then, it's shut down.
What if someone has a vendetta and they just say, I smelled it? How do you measure that?
It would have to be, city official.
I think I worry about what's made inside of it. I understand the chief and I think I'm open to that. I think I did worry that it's a binary.
And
Shortly. Let's let Carlos. Yeah.
on the last comment, I kind of heard it was, the concern was trying to ensure that they're using the best equipped systems that are out there. And that it would be at the time that they submit. I mean, you could look at, and this also serves as the process of what, lays out the expectations of what the city is looking for to review. Now, we will conduct a site plan review and a special permit review. And there could be an addition that the city will, there would be two things. One is that the city will, this probably isn't the right wording for now, but at least to get it out. The city will hire an outside consultant to review and ensure that the systems equipped or the systems installed the best management practices at the time or something like that.
Comment?
Thanks for raise their hand to Zoom.
You say my name?
Yes, please.
Okay, Raphael Madsen, 809 Newcastle Drive. Two things I wanted to say. I think at least my concern, since I was the one that raised it, is more about the enforcement part than defining the reasonably detected. But it seems like a solution for reasonably detected would be, if you got a complaint, send someone from the city there, and someone from the city. I'm not worried that people from the city won't acknowledge a problem if there's a problem. I think Rock Hill, it's pretty obvious there's a problem. My issue is, will it get shut down if there is a problem? And I think that's where we should send more. But I wanted to put in the idea that a way to test reasonably detected could be send someone from the city or county or something.
Right.
I think that's a reasonable thing, not to just say someone with a vendetta can call 500 times.
No,
X complaints leads to the problem.
understand.
Yeah.
Okay,
Thank you.
Okay, go ahead.
Kate Hellman, 800 North Price. The city of Denver, I would recommend looking at their, the way they handle it, because they have a whole process that's outlined on their website for when they have complaints. It's a certain number of complaints within 30, I don't know exactly the steps, but I remember looking at it through this whole process, and they have a pretty comprehensive approach to it. whether that's something that we want to make sure is in the special permit process, or it's something that is maybe put on a designated spot of the website for businesses to access, or something to think about. But the city of Denver has, I
think
would
that could be
consult
added
that.
As a best practice.
Yeah.
for The special permit.
And
So-
then just a suggestion, what if we just dropped reasonably?
What?
Just dropped the word reasonably.
Well, that's where you get into. basically,
Yeah,
you know,
it's still going to be subjective, but it seems like losing reasonably makes it a little less subjective.
Well, I know, but it's.
If we can get everybody to come up in the front that wants to speak, it is really hard to hear comments online if you're not in front of a microphone. And I got 4 or 5 people already in here. So just out of respect for them to be able to hear the comments.
And-
And I urge you to speak in there.
And Stephanie Todd, I saw raised her hand. She is the one person from our group who's really been in communications with the county on their odor measures. So she would probably know more than anybody else in our group.
Okay,
Thanks.
okay, thanks.
All right.
I'm Nina Miller, 36 Price Woods. I just wanted to say that no other municipality has the word reasonably. They all say detected. And just drop that from there. Also remember that everything can be measured. Light can be measured, sound can be measured, smell can be measured.
Tricky, but I know. Thank you.
That's just a fact.
Take some comments.
Yeah, I do have a.
Yeah.
Ms. Todd, I'm going to transfer you over to panelist. Ms. Todd, if I can ask you to, if you can have your video operable at the time of speaking, and then of course, just introduce yourself and address.
There, can you hear me?
Yes,
Yes.
ma'am.
Yeah, Stephanie Todd, 7 Heather Hill Lane. And I have 2 comments. First, I think the ordinance does need to say from outside the structure. Because once the odor leaves the structure, well, then it's gone. And I mean, so then there's going to be odor in the air. So the odor needs to be contained within the building, which is completely feasible. Because now if you put these, buffer, 500 feet, 100 feet, it's going to depend on the wind. It's going to depend on the conditions, on the humidity, on the wind. It's going to depend on all these other factors that really shouldn't be taken into account. So my understanding was the buffer was for other reasons, because essentially to protect property values, because I don't know if people want to live right next to a marijuana facility. So anyway, so that's one, is that it should be, as it is, detected outside the structure. The other, I suggest that someone call St. Louis County Air Pollution Office. They do take care of all these issues in the county. My understanding is they do have a measuring device that's assigned to specific inspectors. They have 2 of these. They will send an inspector out. He will do a specific ratio of air, and then the kind of, odor air versus other air. He does a ratio. And if that inspector can smell it, then yes, it's a violation. So there is a, yes, it's not a parts per milligram, parts per meter or whatever. It is sort of subjective by this inspector, but it is a repeatable technique. It's based on an inspector that's trained on this device. And my understanding is that the city does these kind of quote, odor inspections fairly frequently whenever anyone calls them to do that. That they regard that is their job. So I can give the council, I can give Carlos, their name, and I don't have a specific person to talk to, unfortunately. But, I can give you all that, the number to call and the email.
Thank you, Ms. Stuff. Appreciate it. All right. Carlos, any other comments?
If there's anybody else that would like to speak, again, if you can raise your hand. And as of yet, no, Sherman.
Okay, very good. I don't know why, guys, I'm hung up on that because I just see it as a it just adds subjectivity to it.
Well-
And being a guy that's involved with this business and dealing with odor investigations and complaints, it's, that term reasonably detected, is tricky. It adds a lot of subjectivity to it. Having some distinct, where it should be no odor. I understand all the concerns and issues, and I think you make a great point too, about the residential buffers, Carlos. But wish there was another word that we could say very reasonably, or minutely reasonably, something like that to give it, so it's not,
Sherman, if I can provide, and just to make sure that everybody's familiar with the process. So the conditions in here will lay out what the minimum standards that would be applied to. So if somebody was looking for a facility in Olivet, they'd be looking first here in here, and then the trigger words are going to be the special permit. Because after that, that means you have to apply for the special permit. So the general conditions outlined in our code regarding special permits would apply, which broaden the city's overall review process. In addition to that, if they're doing modifications, they'll probably have to go through site plan review. That also broadens the process. Now, the site plan and the discussion of the special permit gets codified into an ordinance. And within that ordinance, the commission and ultimately the council can establish additional standards. And those standards can be generalized, or they could be numerical standards, or they can be every other year you're going to get reviewed, or, or so. So what I'm trying to get to is, and then trying to take a look at section F from a different perspective, that the goal here is to ensure that the order, the order standards, that there is no odor detection outside of the structure as much as possible in there. And that's what we're trying to establish, or we should look at it in terms of how do we articulate that. So the way it's established is going to be reviewed on a case-by-case basis. And then again, those that violate those are in violation of an ordinance, or the procedures of how the city will address a violation is done through that individual's ordinance or so. Is that
through the special permit.
correct?
I think what's I'm noticing is that this to me, if I'm hearing what you're saying, is more about enforcing that if they're gonna even apply, and the requirements are they have to have the filtration should be done, so whether it's reasonable or no, but it doesn't talk to the enforcement, because that's, I think, to the point is the enforcement comes as part of the special permit. Because I think my concern is if it's detected once, does that mean they're done? This is trying to say you must put a good filtration system in, whether we say reasonable or minimal or not common. But if they do put a good filtration system in, and we do, there is the occasional detection, that doesn't mean they're ousted immediately. It has to be, that's more the conversation of the special permit and what we get codified in that, correct?
Correct. So the goal is, again, with F is to to set the tone of that review process, the expectation.
We don't have to do that in here. That's.
Well, it's not always necessarily the intent, because that's what the special permit, because we could come through with establishing all the standards, then why do you need to go through a special permit?
Right,
It's codified already through ordinance.
right, right.
That's
This
the-
process gives you a little bit more flexibility, again, to consider those on a case by case basis. And that could be good, that could be bad too, but that's what the whole the whole intent is. So taking a look at F,
Mhm.
and maybe in terms of the reading, again, you're trying to establish that expectation. And whether it should say that the goal of the city is that, that there should be no reasonable detection of odor outside of that structure. We're not going to tell you how to do it, because we don't know what you have yet. But when you
Right.
come in, that's our goal. And, whether we hire additional outside consultants, or we get the highest and best equipment that's in place, or we follow other community standards like the Denver one, those are like internal policies on how those things are addressed.
What if we said the expectation is there could be minimal to no odor outside the structure and will be subject to the guidelines set forth in the special, review in the special permit? Both reasonable down a little bit, but then again, the special permits, really, we're gonna be able to get very twofold.
I'm okay with that. Let's think about that. Seth, what do you think about that, Carl? From
Trying to look at how it would be worded and
So like odor ventilation system such that the odors of marijuana would either not be detected or extremely minimal outside of the structure. Any
minimally detected.
minimally would be minimally detected. And I understand they're still vague, but then the special permit process and review will dictate specific conditions and requirements.
The odors of marijuana
Something.
would not be detected outside the structure or only minimally or something.
Minimally
Would not-
infrequent or something.
Yeah, yeah.
Within property limits, minimally within property.
well, and then it goes back to what you kind of noted. The goal would be you want to minimize the detectability outside of the building envelope. Doesn't matter whether you're 10 feet from it to 750 feet. If I understood your original comment is when I'm standing outside of that building, I want to minimize that odor.
Exactly.
So it's outside of that structure, so so you want to minimize the, that odor outside of the structure. And, the goal here is that the way you do it is going to be through, is going to be the way you do it, or the way you approach the city on how you're going to do it is going to be through the special permit, and again,
Right.
it already states you already need that special permit, but the
Right,
purpose of that permit is to show us how
right.
you're doing it. Now, how do you enforce it? Well, again, it's through that special permit. Every special permit that we typically do have identifies that the city reserves the right to pull the permit, in terms of the violation. Now, with all violations, and it would be pretty rare, but I'll be honest, we never go out with the intent of shutting somebody down. Typically, it's to verify the concern with the complaint.
So,
Correct. To engage the discussion of, are you aware, or did you know, or hey, it's doing this. And then thirdly, you need to mitigate it, and, and we have the authority to apply a reasonable amount of time. In there, we do that because we're also creating a paper trail that if something happens, we can say, we went through all this. Now, there are certain things that, this is severely injurious to the public health or the public safety, and we're kind of forced to act quickly. And I'm not sure how order would be treated, and it would depend on the extent too. But that process is usually, well, first, the special permit identifies the council's ability to to withdraw it, which means you shut down. Or two, it also identifies, and this is what we did with the previous application, was that we had an odor mitigation plan. They were gonna do this, and if this happened, they were gonna do this, and if this happened, this is where we were gonna be. And that is a process. It wasn't codified, but it's tied in with that special permit, and therefore it's enforceable. Yeah, hopefully that.
Still like the idea of changing that word reasonably to some
Understand.
other version, that we just kind of talked about.
Right, the minimal.
Like minimal, I like the minimal.
Agreed.
Carlos, do you want us to? We, vote to approve this with those changes?
Correct, and there's different ways that you can do it. I think that the way. The extent that this ordinance has been drafted, that it would be best to bring it. Somebody to bring it in motion, and then if there's any amendments, those amendments either could be hours of operation. So the commission can make that decision in there, and then if it's in regards to the reasonably detect, then an amendment be done in there. The other process is that whoever is a motion maker can go ahead and just do that all at once. But I'm
I
not
think
clear
you'll
we
want to.
had that final language yet.
Yeah. All right, let's do it the first way that Carlos talked about. Let's bring it into motion, and before we vote, we'll consider doing individual amendments. Does that sound right? Okay, good. So do I hear a motion? I know, we're. Cheat sheet here.
Sorry about that. Let me get that. There you go. It should be up.
That's
Oh, that's,
67.
Yeah, it's actually,
Here we go.
All right, so which, we're gonna make a motion.
It's on the screen now.
and we'll add the amendment steps.
I'd like to motion to recommend approval and forward to the city council an ordinance amending the Olivet Municipal Code by enacting a new chapter 450 regulating medical marijuana facilities with the draft date of October 20th, 2022. Amendments.
Well, let's go. Before that, I'll say motion's been made. Do I hear a second?
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded. Do we have any recommended amendments?
Now you would motion if there's something that you'd like to change or a specific section within the ordinance you'd like to discuss with the commission members for changing.
So let's talk about first the times, the operation, hours of operation.
So I'll make a motion for an amendment.
Go ahead.
To change the hours to be stated that it's 7 for dispensaries, 7 days a week, 8 AM to 8 PM. And for cultivation, manufacturing.
Let's do one at a time.
Okay.
Just,
No,
motion-
that's good.
Motion's been made. Do I hear a second?
Second.
And seconded? Okay, so let's talk about
We vote on that one.
Yes.
okay, let's vote on that amendment.
So just to make sure it's clear that the motion on the floor is that to amend that dispensaries would have the hours of operation would be from 8 AM to 7 PM, 7 days a week.
Correct. 8 to
Sorry,
8.
8 to 8. 8 to 8, 7 days. Thank
8 AM to 8 PM, 7 days a week.
Correct.
I don't know if commission has, as soon as you're ready for the roll
I
call.
think
vote,
we're
or you
ready
can
for
have
the vote
discussion.
on that. I think
Yeah.
we're all in agreement, so we're ready for the vote.
On that, Commissioner Rosenberg,
Approved.
Commissioner Spiegelglass,
Approved.
Commissioner Lewis,
you. Approved.
Chairman Jorgo,
Approved.
the amendment passes 4-0.
I'll make a second amendment motion to change the hours for the cultivation manufacturing facilities to allow 7 days a week, 24/7 for operations employees only, but no. I don't know how to word this.
Public.
No
public.
retail
No
operations.
retail operations or activities. I don't think so, but I'm just trying to get in front of it. I don't think you can, but.
Second, sorry.
The motion by Mr. Lewis, seconded by Mr. Spiegelhaus. That motion would be to amend the current ordinance to allow the alterations, the hours of operation regarding cultivation and manufacturing facilities to allow 7 days at a 24-hour period for operations and employees only. No activities related to retail would be permitted. Discussion?
You guys like it?
Yes.
Like it? Well, yeah, let's call the vote.
Commissioner Rosenberg,
Approve.
Commissioner Spiegelglass,
Approve.
Commissioner Lewis,
Approve.
and Chairman Dragell.
Approved. We're gonna do that next. Yeah, thank you. Okay, do I hear another amendment? No?
I can go for a third.
All
All right. I'll make a motion to amend section F regarding odors to replace reasonably with minimally detected from outside the structure, and also add the sentence, and help me with the wording on this, that the special permit process will also dictate odor requirements and potential enforcement measures to be put in place.
Second.
That the special permit process will also dictate odor requirements and enforcement procedures.
Let me ask a question on this before it's seconded, or I guess we need to second it and then we can go through discussion. Do I hear a second?
Second.
Second, okay. Is that terminology right? Because we say right now, ventilation, with odor control, filtration, ventilation systems such that the odors of marijuana cannot be minimally detected, or should we say can only be minimally detected? You know what I mean?
Then this makes it sounds like, oh yeah, minimally detected, go for it. I read it.
Just outside the structure. At least that's the way I was hearing it. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I'm just trying to.
It was kind of taking out the cannot, but can only be detected minimally outside the structure.
The odors are only minimally detected. Yeah, I don't know. It's semantics on that, but I'm open to wherever you think it's better to phrase it.
Here's Richard Brophy when we need it.
Yeah. I think the correct thing would be are minimally, take out cannot be reasonably and replace that with are minimally detected.
How about, well, can I make it stronger to say are not detectable or at most minimally, because I'd rather approach it assuming they can make it not.
Yeah.
Say it again.
So cannot be detected or,
Only minimally.
I mean, I hate saying cannot and then minimally because it's like you're fighting it yourself. How about like, or can only be minimally detected or can. Not only be minimally detected with goal of no detection at all. The language.
Yeah, I don't like that either. Cannot be minimally detected. Not be no, because if you say it cannot be minimally detected, if it's really detected, then that's a
Can
lot.
only be minimally detected outside the structure, right outside the structure.
Yeah, well, say it again,
Can only be
minimally detected.
minimally detected right outside the structure.
And not, and would it help then to say, and not detected at the
Outside
boundary,
Boundary.
at the boundary?
Probably makes a little more sense.
Like there might be something 5 feet out the facility,
Yeah.
minimum,
Right,
but you can't have it at the boundary.
right.
Right. And so let's read it again. Can only be minimally detected outside the structure and cannot be detected at the property.
Have it say, do we need to get outside the structure, like within the proximity of 20 feet of the structure or something, or is it not? Do we not need to get that?
I don't think we should get that
Okay,
specific.
all right. So,
And not detected at the property.
okay,
Carlos, what do you think? Well, did you get that? All right, good. No, we cannot. Thanks, sorry, but. Okay. Are we all ready? We all set for that? You like it? You do? Daniel?
Yeah, let's do.
okay, so we already had a motion in a second. Do we need to read-
Now we need to vote on this. What's on the
I
table?
think we should go over it one more time, make sure. we
Yeah.
know what we're voting.
Carlos is gonna read it over.
I was gonna follow what was on the.
And I, maybe a better way to say it, Carlos, would be cannot be detected at the boundary. And only minimally outside the structure. No way to say it.
Yeah.
Cannot be detected at the boundary and only minimally outside the structure. We're boxing it in between the boundary and the structure.
I'd be okay with that.
I'd be okay with it. Running on the.
And the nice thing is we can always make amendments to revise these in the future. The city council could just reject it.
So I'm just gonna go through that paragraph. just to
Yeah,
ensure that we
perfect.
have in that- to fit within that context. So all structures used for cultivation, manufacturing and dispensing activities shall be equipped with odor control filtration and ventilation systems such that the odors of marijuana cannot be detected at the boundary and minimally detected outside the
Proper-
structure,
Property boundary?
at the property boundary.
Yes, then we had another.
The other
addition.
sentence talking about the odor requirements. And
Enforcement.
enforcement will be detailed in the special permit.
So the motion maker for the amendment was Mr. Lewis and Mr. Rosenberg. Do you can agree with the final language?
Yes.
You want me to go through it one more time?
No.
All right. All right, we like it. All right,
They get a different answer.
okay. So any additional discussion from the commission?
No,
I'll go ahead and call for the vote. Chairman, are you ready?
yes,
Commissioner Rosenberg,
Approved.
Commissioner Spiegelglass,
Approved.
Commissioner Lewis,
Approved.
Chairman Dragell,
approved.
motion passes 4-0.
All right, good. Okay, let's move on to item B, an ordinance to amend chapter 400.
Chairman, if I can just as a second and
Yeah.
And there, so the next process would be to get this to the city council. And also publish this for a public hearing. So the next council meeting is Tuesday, October 27th.
No, today the 20th. 25th.
October, it will be on Tuesday night at 7 o'clock. In which the council, if it considers that, will conduct the first reading. It's up to the council if they want to have any comments on that. And then on the, bear with me 1 second as I try to get a calendar, so I got what the dates would be. On November 8th, if I get the paperwork in, the council would have its scheduled second reading and is required by our ordinance or zoning regulations to have a public hearing. So again, right now, the tentative schedule would be to have this before the council next Tuesday on October 25th. And then if acted on by the council, a second reading and a public hearing on Tuesday, November 8th. All meetings are at 7 o'clock PM. And of course, cities conducting them both online and in person.
Can the council make changes to this?
Yes.
At their discretion, and it doesn't
Yes.
come back to us, correct?
Correct.
Okay.
Well, it's up to the council if they
If
want
they want to
to.
send it back. But the
revisit.
nice thing is if the public has input, further updates, suggestions, they can
Correct.
bring it forward, give the council can make changes and continue forward.
Correct.
So we can move on to item B. Ordinance to amend chapter 400 zoning regulations being part of Title IV land use of the Olivet Municipal Code regarding daycare centers in the PA Public Activity District. Charles?
Great. So again, this item was before the commission at its last meeting in a draft form. There was some discussion, that took place. I kind of broke it down into the three questions that were or three inquiries during the commission's review. One was, why is the amendment necessary? Why not maintain a special permit use process to regulate these type of uses? And how to ensure safety and code issues are addressed and maintained. That being said, so what is prompting this amendment is that there are several existing places of worship and schools that already operate similar service. And then we know that Emmanuel Lutheran has a daycare facility, an early childhood facility, I think private. So I believe New Sac-Haree does operate some daycare type of facilities throughout the seasons. We also know the community center in the past has had adult daycare centers operating, and of course we have our day camps. Now, what falls under those umbrellas, it's always questionable, and I'm not trying to get into that, but we do have those activities that take place in schools and places of worship. Also, we've made the commission aware that there was an assessment conducted by the YWCA that showed a need for childcare services in the area. That being said, the city of Olivet, specifically through Don, has worked diligently with the Y39 North, the Plant Science Center, and the Miriam Academy to try to create a consortium or a group to try to address the needs assessments, and has been successful that they're looking to develop a facility on the Miriam Academy. Now, on that site, in the past, there used to be a daycare operated by FCP Hebrew Academy, and then subsequently by the J, excuse me, used to operate there. They were under special permit in the past in there. Now, another reason why we looked at that is that it furthers the goals and objectives of the 2006 comprehensive plan, and that's the document we always refer to in terms of what planning decisions and things we bring forward to the commission. And there was a variety of sections in the comprehensive plan that talk about these industrial areas, especially the Plant Science Center, business support, and exploring broader mix of uses where appropriate in there. And that's what I kind of reference there in the report. So the comprehensive plan, while not specifically stating that we should look for a child care facility, it notes that we should be cognizant of the services and the business needs of the various employers throughout our community, specifically those related to plant and life sciences. You know, guided by the comprehensive plan, again, Don's been working with Miriam Academy, Plant Science Center, the county partnership, the Y, to secure and develop a childcare facility at the parcel address is 1138 North Worcester Road. So that's why we're kind of doing this, or that's my justification of why we're bringing this forward to the commission. Does keeping the use as a special permit provide the city more authority? The goal here is the only childcare facilities, and that's all that we're looking at solely, would be those that are located in the PA district. So facilities that would locate in the commercial districts or any other non-residential district will still be subject to a special permit. And when you look in the code of what are the additional conditions that are placed in the special permit, it says you just need to ensure you have 600 feet of outdoor play area. And you need to limit your outdoor play times from 8 a.m. to 6 p.m. And the reason that those two conditions are placed in there is that when a facility locates on Olive Boulevard, where sizes of parcels are much smaller, we're trying to ensure that there's adequate green space or play area and that we minimize disruption to the residential properties. Well, the PA district requires that you have a minimum of 2 acres. That's very hard to find along Olive Boulevard. And therefore, that 2 acres kind of addresses the reasons why we put those two conditions in that process in there. Again, while those conditions make sense in our non-residential CORMU city center, the PA district already takes that into account because the purpose is for parks, schools, places of worship, things that are going to take that into account already. They're going to have green space. They're going to have sizable sites and such. So that was part of the reason in there. It was a good discussion in terms of what we just talked about in terms of the medical marijuana facilities and why we prefer the process of the special permit. But the city still maintains its authority in how these are run, operated, or regulated through other sections of the code. Another question was, well, how do we ensure that they're going to comply with all the other safety and building codes? Well, first, the state has a long list of regulations that they have to meet. Most of them are pretty reflective or are already adopted through our code standards. And the city of Olivet has also adopted additional standards. 2 weeks ago, the fire marshal was before the city council to have the council adopt a corridor color regulation for schools in there. So when they both for police and fire, if there was an event, instead of saying you need to go to room 202 or Mrs. McCall's room, it's red corridor room 202. So they have a distinction. The sites the buildings or facilities are broken down by color corridors. And then they also require that the building numbers be placed on the windows. And there was a couple other things in there. So they've gone above and beyond what the minimal building code requires. A facility like that would have to meet the same standard, whether it's conditional or not. It would still, those standards would be applicable. So I hope that addresses the three concerns and comments from the commission. You have the final draft text before you, and up to the commission if you'd like to take action.
Anybody have any questions or comments for Carlos? I don't have any issues. I appreciate the report, Carlos. You went over that very well. Does everyone have it's not much of an addition, so if there's no other further discussion, do I hear a motion? Public comments. Oh, thank you. Public comments. Anybody in the public in the audience wish to address this particular item? None. Carlos, do we have anybody on?
Yes, I have Ms. Todd. Ms. Todd, I'm going to transfer you over to panelists.
Yeah, Stephanie Todd again, 7 Heather Hill Lane. Could you read that again? What about the odor? Could you read? Because I was really confused because it sounds like you're saying it's okay. When you changed it from reasonable to minimal, it sounds like you're saying it's okay if you can smell odor outside the building. So that's my concern.
Ms. Todd, unfortunately, we already voted on that and we moved on. So we're talking right now about the text amendment for the PA district and child daycare services.
Okay, I'm sorry.
That's all right.
So,
But we could talk maybe afterwards, or, you could talk to Carlos afterwards.
well, so I'm not there, but I think Ralph or Kate are there and they might.
They're no longer here, and
They're not there either.
we've already voted on that and approved the changes to that.
All right.
Now it's going to go on, just to inform you, it's going to go up to city council. And they'll have a presentation or, public read on that, and then take on public comments as well. So that could be a good time to address any concerns.
All right, sorry.
First reading is October 25th. Thanks, Miss. Okay, thanks,
All right.
Mr.
Sorry.
Okay, seeing no other public comments related to this, Carlos, anybody else?
Okay, if anybody you would like to speak in regards to this petition item, again, if you can click the raise your hand button, it's located in the lower portion of your Zoom window. Chairman, I see none.
See none, do I hear a motion? On the screen too.
Okay. Yeah, I'd like to make a motion to recommend approval and forward to the city council an ordinance amending section 400.950 permitted uses of Article X PA Public Activity District, being part of Chapter 400 zoning regulations, Title 4 land use of the Olivet Municipal Code, to include child daycare services as noted in the staff memorandum dated October 20th, 2022.
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded. Do I hear, Carlos, will you please call the vote? They're too quick.
Commissioner Rosenberg,
Approved.
Commissioner Spiegelglass,
Approved.
Commissioner Lewis,
Approved.
and Chairman Drigel.
Approved.
Motion passes unanimously. And again, Chairman, this item will be forwarded to the council at their next meeting on October 25th. Since it's an amendment to the zoning regulations, it also requires a public hearing that would be scheduled for November 8th.
Okay, good. Okay, we'll move on to discussion items. And item A is Hilltop West redevelopment project.
And Chairman, for discussions, it's just to kind of hold a short segment, just to kind of go over some items that staff is working with either petitioners or so. You're aware of the Hilltop West conceptual redevelopment plan that was submitted, I think it was back in April or so. Where the petitioner had acquired or assembled several properties that would be on the eastern side of the Opus development between Hilltop and Price. There were existing single-family houses addressed off of Hilltop on the western side of the roadway, that is. And they were proposing some attached townhouse or attached units along there to replace several existing homes in there. That was the initial conceptual plan that was discussed. That was reviewed by the commission. It's on your left side of your monitors there. But I guess the petitioner is here in terms of the process for assemblage doesn't appear to be working, and is looking at a different concept in terms of at least starting to develop new single family homes detached single-family homes in lieu of the attached. The issue here is that the series of the first 4 or 5 existing single-family homes that are north of Chevy's are part of an older subdivision in which those lots are only 40 feet wide. Under our ordinance, in order for an alteration or a new home be built on a residential lot, it has to be 50 feet or wider. The goal here, the council's goal here is to force consolidations of the smaller the properties that are deemed just too small. And there are other mechanisms that the city has to allow an assemblage of smaller lots like you can see in Hilltop Villas or Castlegate. But in terms of single family properties, then in no case should lots 50 feet or less be redeveloped, or that we should extend or allow any additional improvements that add on to that existing home. Now, you can maintain the home to ensure it doesn't dilapidate or so, and you have to meet the city's minimal property maintenance standards. But if you're on a lot that's less than 50 feet in width, in essence, the way the code reads is that you can't put any additions and you can't tear down and expect to be able to rebuild on the property. So the developer's looking at his options regarding redeveloping the west side of Hilltop here. And we had the discussion about the lot sizes and the limitations that he would face, and noted that he be welcome to come to the commission to kind of talk about the thought of, whether the city should look into reducing the minimal lot size in that. There's a couple of things just to come in play. So right now, the minimal lot size is 100 feet. For any new, if somebody was coming in for a new subdivision, you start at 100 feet, then you're allowed to create an average of your surroundings and reduce that 100 feet as long as you meet or exceed a certain average. And there's a way that that average is calculated. But in no case could any new lot be created that's less than 50 feet. In this case, they're not looking to create new lots. They're existing lots of record, but they're below 50 feet. But the way the code reads is that you tear it down, you can't rebuild because it'd be below that minimum. So the question here is, is it reasonable to consider existing lots of record less than 50 feet in width? And that's what the developers here to kind of talk about and address the commission on. I also put together, or Don, I should say, put together a map that illustrates, well, how many lots in the city of Olivet are below 50 feet. And you need to take a close look at that because the way the system calculates them, any lot that's part of a circular process or it's a pie shape, the front part of the lot's going to be less than 50 feet. But as you get towards the back, it meets the average and such. So you'll see some of these, especially like in Indian Metals, in there that are in the teardrops or cul-de-sacs that are identified here. But then you'll see the rectangular lot and their primary locations in there. And really a majority of them are concentrated right where the developer's at. And at that point, that's all I have, and be glad to answer your questions.
Slide, if you advance the slide, the map is in the presentation too.
Oh,
There you
okay.
go.
This is 50 feet in length.
With
Width, but at all points. That's why these teardrop ones are showing up.
That is correct.
Well, it's that front property line.
That's measures for 50 feet.
Yes.
Okay.
I'm sorry. See, got myself there. So all of those ones with those, curved inlets there, those are all very short, right? So, and it was anything that was 49 feet basically or below,
So it might have started at
or
like
50.
42, but then gotten to 80 on some of those.
Yeah,
Correct.
because so you see those along the side, and those measurements are not accounted for.
Right.
It was strictly the front.
Okay. Do you mind?
Oh, yeah, no, go ahead, sorry. I
So
was
Carlos,
thinking-
the previous, oh, I'm sorry.
No, it's all right, go ahead.
The previous, if you go back to the slide, I'm sorry, I'm curious prior. What was the plan? Because. I assume the duplexes or townhomes next to each other would have been the same issue. Was it that we were consolidating land and then they were spacing it out?
And they were gonna create a different zoning designation. They were gonna rezone the properties that would provide that flexibility, but if they can't consolidate them all together, they can't rezone. You know,
Is there not the option to take those four, zone those together and break them into three or something like
they
that?
wouldn't meet the threshold for the rezoning.
Because you said it had to be 100,
Pardon?
because you said it had to be.
No, there'd be two things. One is the developer had assembled enough properties to reach a threshold where he could create a new zoning designation. In there.
And what dezonation is that? That's. the
And I think
one
we were looking at
added.
the MU Gateway District,
Okay,
which is also what the Opus development had rezoned in there. But you have to assemble enough property to get to the next step. And actually, I think they were short. And we had some discussion of, you know, would we bring that bar down to an extent? After that, you know, if he can't assemble enough properties to meet that threshold, then he's left with the status quo, which are the SR district, single family home. And that's where the 50-foot minimum is tied to. So again, if he were just to do the first three homes, he doesn't, it's not enough assembled property to look at a different zoning designation.
So if we don't approve this. and
Well,
then-
we're just discussing.
Oh, I understand, but I mean, if there isn't some kind of change to this, then, and the new rezoning doesn't happen, then there's nothing that can be built on this
Well,
in current.
yes, there is. But not as many as as the developer would probably prefer.
you'd have to combine.
You
That's
can
what I
com-
was asking you. I thought you said you couldn't. That's what.
No, they could look at the three 40-foot parcels and create two single-family.
Okay, that's what I was
Okay,
initially
yeah,
asking. I
all right,
apologize.
I
That's
apologize.
what I was saying. Yes,
So,
they'd have two 60-foot land lots.
correct.
Three, but yeah.
Develop.
Hi there. Good evening. Andy Cohen, how are you? 15 Narragansett Drive for my address, and thank you for the opportunity here. Carlos, thank you, and Dawn for the map work and the description. My goal and my intent all along always was and is to offer another diverse housing opportunity that doesn't really exist currently in the northeast quadrant of the city of Olivet. My initial plan and concept was to do a duplex development with 5 buildings or 6 buildings, and then there'd be a single one that was left. As the process has gone on, I've been really kind of fighting a battle of either not getting enough units on the land to make the project feasible for a myriad of reasons, some being size, some being cost, and just some being, you can only, you know, the math doesn't lie. You can only fit so much on there. One of the solutions that Carlos and I talked about was combining several of the duplex units to get more units, to get more density. And between the site coverage that would require stormwater detention that would take away units, between some sanitary sewer lines that exist that can't be relocated, it got to the point to where it just became really not feasible to do a higher density development like that. So I went to Carlos and said, kind of gave him an update. And I thought to myself, if the duplex units were going to be approximately 2,500 square feet, how could I utilize some of the lots and build a smaller home, a less expensive home, to still give someone an option for a brand new home in Olivet? As you guys have seen over the years, the price points have gotten very, very high. So I'm still trying to come up with a solution to offer something new, attainable, and still give someone that opportunity. The challenge is the 40 feet wide lot. They have been, as Carlos mentioned, they were originally platted in 1926. They've not been altered. They weren't like a carve out. So I wanted to go through the process and see what I could do with some of the more narrow lots. Brian brought up a good point. Could you take the first three and consolidate them into two to make them 60 feet wide lots? The problem with that is you're really not offering part of the comprehensive plan is some more diverse or some other, I hate to use the word affordable, but affordable housing. It's going to be at a price point to where it really defeated the purpose. It's not going to achieve the goal that I would prefer to see. There have been, according to the 2020 census data, there's about 3,300 homes in the city of Olivet. 9 of those would fall into this category of the 40 feet wide. So it's a pretty low percentage. 5 of the 9 are on Hilltop. The alternative is they stay as existing homes that can't even, you can't even add a garage. You can't even alter the home with a remodel to add more square footage. There has been a home, and Carlos can speak to it, at 9044 Watsonia that was less than 50, and it was granted, not through a variance, but it was granted through some type of process to have a large addition and a 2-car garage added. So there is, I guess I'd say, some precedent that was done.
How wide's the house that you're proposing?
26 feet wide. The current 3 homes that sit at 11, 19, 23, and 27 are also 26 feet wide as well. Oh, did I leave anything else out that we may have discussed?
26 feet wide, what's your side yard setbacks? Are going to be equal on both sides or?
They would be, yeah. So from a street view point of view, yes, the home would be taller because it's two stories versus a single story right now, but the physical home itself wouldn't be any wider.
Square footage.
1,900 to 2,000 square feet. So still has that. I mean, I guess you could call them detached villas, but it's still going to have a smaller square footage than what a newer home is currently being built. And then
Price point thought or?
yeah, I'd like to be like $599. It's a lot of money still. The next price for a new home in the Northeast area is in the high sixes, $699.
What were your villa that townhome was gonna go for?
Probably 650 to 7, in line with what Doug Cohen is going to do with the city center townhome. So I'm trying to get to a very not low, but a lower price point for a new home. 4-bedroom, 2.5 bath, 2-car garage. The 3 homes currently don't have garages, so you're the street parking is where the cars have to park. The first home, 1119 Hilltop, prior to me purchasing it, was vacant for over 10 years. And I believe the city actually flagged it as inhabitable. Is that correct?
Starting the process, we were starting the process of looking at the condemnation. And condemnation being posting it that it was unoccupiable. That was because I think the utilities had been disconnected.
Correct.
In there, we couldn't ascertain any of the conditions of the structure inside. But once you disconnect utilities, it's an unoccupiable structure. the two spectrums here that, from the planning perspective that we're struggling with is, of course, our goal is to further the vision of the comprehensive plan. Comprehensive plan looked at the areas closer to the interchange, especially south of Olives, as increasing the density. And that's the discussion we articulated through with the Opus development and why we found that the Opus development was consistent with the plan's objectives and trying to push through that. We did try to engage with them to expand in there because we didn't want to have this process where you get what we call these remnant lots. And it's like, well, now what are we going to do with this in there? And in that discussion, that's where we engage with Mr. Cohen to talk about, hey, could you assemble these and look at this more holistically as opposed to a lot by lot basis? And that's what he did. And that's what he came before the commission late spring or summer with that concept. And that again, it increased densities, but it wasn't a large density increase like the Opus project would have been, or the crossing project would have been.
But it's a good transition.
Correct. It provided that transition. And again, it was reflective of the principles of the comprehensive plan for the density on that side, providing alternative housing types in the community as opposed to the detached single family. Then you go to the other spectrum of what's in the status quo. Well, we got those 3 lots, and there's really minimal what you can do with those 3 lots. You can still maintain them, but I'm sure that there's a cost and there's points that need to be made that make that difficult or unprofitable in there. And that's probably why they're in the state that they are now in there. And why did they get there? Well, reasons could be because the way the ordinance is configured, restricting investment on lots 50 feet or less. So then you look at, well, why 50 feet? What is unique about that number? It's hard to say, but we did find that within the city of Olivet, we have various lots that are 50 feet wide that made them eligible for improvement. So whether you were, I don't recall Harvest or Cherry Cheek, because some of those reached the 60s. Same with Chevy Chase, some reached into the 60s and 70s. But we had a variety of locations where 50-foot lots were available. Then you look at those that are less. And I think what we found in the analysis that Don did is that, and I forgot what the number you had indicated.
9 of the 3,300.
So that 50 feet was brought down to 9. What is the impact? That 50 foot was brought down to 40. What is that impact? What's going to happen if we looked at something like that? If they're existing, not that you can create more and it would be a total of 9 of the 3,000 plus lots that we have in the city of Olivet. And you got to you got to look at that aspect too. So there's different things going on. One, our goal is to kind of push that comprehensive plan vision and increase density. But then you have what's existing and whether the ordinance is impacting the reinvestment in those homes in there, and is that in the best interest of the city? That's really the question.
I think one of the thoughts that would occur to you all being residents of the city is that if you step away from the ordinance for a minute, and if you step away from the comprehensive plan, the first 3, or I guess you could say the first home that is directly to the north of Chevy's is, and look, it's my fault for buying it. A lot of developers never want to admit mistakes. I obviously want to try to make a situation better, but I think you have to ask yourself, just as a resident and as a consumer, would it be better to have 3 new homes or the 3 existing homes that are there? The first one being the most derelict, if I can say that. That's what it kind of boiled down to me. I just kept thinking to myself, what else could you do with these? Carlos would require me to put a sidewalk in. So, there's currently no sidewalk there on that side of the street. So it does improve the neighborhood. It does improve the area by building 3 new homes. But there is a code ordinance enforcement issue to it.
we also setting ourselves up for future, if all of a sudden these 40-foot lots are allowed, we're setting ourselves up for stormwater issues.
But there's
especially
only
if people-
9 of them that are existing, right? That's what it fact. So that's the
But
most.
they seem to be, well, there's 5 right there, and then
Right.
if somebody then puts an addition on the backyard, puts a big patio, are we gonna run into other issues that we seem to find, like on Cherry Tree or, other places? So, I mean, is there ways to mitigate that? I mean, the nice thing about doing the densification with these larger buildings or larger developments
Mhm.
is there's other ways to address the stormwater holistically with all of those, with that large project.
Right.
And we lose that with allowing, leads. So I don't know, that would be one
We
of
would
my,
have to comply with our stormwater with the new single family home.
yeah, we would definitely comply with that. But
I don't think that I would say respectfully, the difference between 40 feet wide to 50 feet wide, there's obviously a calculation that would be done by the civil engineer, but it would still require the same type of stormwater detention that would be there.
Okay.
I don't think that, I don't think the 10 feet or the extra 5 and 5 of lot coverage would dramatically alter the situation. Plus, again, the status quo, there's no storm.
Would feel better if you, even if an exception was granted, you still required it to be stormwater managed to a 50-foot lot. Count for it. I don't know if that's feasible or not.
Yeah, no, it's,
Roof structure.
yeah, I wouldn't have I mean, just speaking,
More retention.
I think we should talk to a stormwater consultant, see what his thoughts are. But
yeah, I don't think making it bigger would be, it would just need to be a little deeper, a little wider. It's not, I don't think dramatically
Just
impacting.
to take care of your concern, or we could also say, I think also to your point, just because you're accepting permission potentially to build doesn't mean. I assume Carlos then. If someone wants to put a deck or a pool or something like that, the normal percentage of how much square footage you have comes into play at that point.
That's correct.
The 40-foot's no longer in play anymore.
Correct.
Well, it's all based on lot size area.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, but then they're gonna have
Simple
that
enough area.
problem that we ran into that pool
Right.
with the lot coverage.
It's the lot
It's gonna be
coverage,
the
that's
same-
fine. It's gonna be
the same
small,
thing.
so good luck. It's gonna be tough, yeah.
I think one of the things when I talked to Carlos was that I believe, and I may be speaking out of turn, but it would require a text amendment, and it would have to be pretty stringent language to where this wouldn't sort of throw it open to anybody else to do, is someone going to come in and say, well, I've got this size lot, I've got this, to where, I mean, I'm just trying to come up with a viable, workable solution that's not going to dramatically alter the code. Of the 5, one of them already had, I'm not quite sure how, but he did a fairly large addition years ago. He would be the immediate neighbor to these 3. And I would imagine that based on my conversations with the owners, having 3 newer homes versus what he currently looks and sits next to would be a major benefit, correct?
And that was, Chairman, if I can, that was one of the other options we had talked about is like, well, what can you do? What's been done and the property immediately to the north that's in the other 3 is there is always the process of applying for a variance. But that's, from my perspective, there's not a hardship in there. I wouldn't want to put the Board of Adjustment in that predicament because it's more of a policy issue. And just because he's got the 3 lots doesn't necessarily make it a hardship in there. Because he does have other options. And then those options again would be, combine the 3 lots and create 2, which is the most reasonable of the options. But then it becomes contrary to the density of growth, trying to do the density of the comprehensive plan. So from three non-conforming lots, I go to two conforming lots, but I lost the lot, so it brings that, you know, it brings that into question. Then is, well, you know, a lot for a lot, and you get the three lots, still not ideal. It's not what's consistent with the vision. But it's something worth considering, and that's why we brought it, you know, talked about bringing it towards to the commission.
I'd like to know.
How is, explain to me how taking three lots and conforming them to 250 square foot lots is a burden, or
It's contrary to the vision of the comprehensive plan, where it's looking to increase density in this area by the interstate south of Allen.
okay.
And we're talking about one, you know. But
I mean, I think seems. Obvious to me that having three nice homes is better than having derelict, of course, in the sidewalk. I'm more struck by my concern of how do we make it affordable and diversity and option, but that's less you, it's more the market and the, I recognize that. I mean, it's.
Yeah, agree.
Yeah, I'm not blaming, it's a broader.
and that,
issue, but-
and here's where I'll bring up, you know, in this is then me, the questions that I've been wrestling is, and then what happened? I mean, here, not many communities throw out the opportunity to, you know, hey, create density here, because that's how you meet your, you know, your bottom line. It's like, okay, you know, the only way I can make this work is I need 10 of them, you know, in there. And so we're, you know, we were open to something like that. So, you know, I throw back to Mr. Cohen, the question is like, well, you know, what is it that the city can do to facilitate you to make it marketable? You know, if, and I'm being facetious here, it's like, so if I told you could put 30 homes on this 1 acre, you know, then does that, you know, does that meet what you need? And I think there's a couple of things that come into play, is the configuration of the lot. But there are other things beyond that, and I think that's what. If you have comments for the commission, I think it's worth listening to.
That's correct. So of some of the other, what I'd say, multifamily developments, the townhomes across from the city center, those lots are 180 feet deep. These are 125 feet deep. So I was, you know, limited to just basically going, you know, north up the street. You know, Carlos and I and my engineer, we looked at turning, we looked at trying to do little building clusters. We just couldn't get enough density. The two homeowners at the very end, it's just, they're not going to sell. I've tried. I mean, I guess one of the things I like to really do besides build properties is actually to talk to people, go to their living rooms. Maybe I have a screw loose, but you know, there are a few folks that I was able to get on a contract that Opus couldn't, and they certainly have way more money and bodies than me. You know, I'm not fortunate enough to live in the city, but I do care a lot about this area, in particular in the Northeast quadrant. You know, I'm trying to do my small part. You know, Brian made a great point. So 2 years ago, a home that I would build there would sell for 600. Now that's at 699. I haven't changed my profit margin. That's strictly because of just the cost of labor material. I promised Missy I wouldn't complain about money, but so I believe me, if I could sell something for less, I would be more than happy to. This is just it's a unique oddity to where you've got a city that's so proactive like yours. It wants more density. That's like unheard of, where you have cities trying to it's usually cities want less density. So there's a great opportunity in this city. I just can't get it to work on that 350 feet of hilltop.
The other houses though, if these three go in, does that mean you're no longer doing townhomes for the rest as well? You're gonna be single family homes?
They would, I still have them under contract, but at this one, they would probably be, well, as you go to the north, they're 50 feet wide lots.
But you make
Oh.
them single family homes, right? Are you gonna knock down and build up?
There would be an opportunity to still do something else because
At that point, but I think the reason I bring it up is
Yeah.
Carlos, because we were initially looking at 11 townhomes, and now we're talking, we would have 8 single-family homes.
Correct.
So we're actually losing 3 density then. So in some ways, it's by doing this, we're forcing the hand that we were barely gonna make an exception and cross underline townhomes, which I'm in favor of, because, more options. Well, it's 6 something, I'm not sure it's better than 599, but neither here nor there. But now we're talking about 3 down, so it's. Yeah, yeah. That's why.
Would we then potentially allow for smaller lots, like if you bought the rest of these homes to reduce the lot size to match all of this?
It becomes complicated, but yeah, there is that, but again, it would be probably a discussion with either this commission or a future commission about, doing a change to the code to accommodate that, or looking at a different type of ordinance.
The
a
problem
different
also
type
with
of
the-
zoning designation. Now, again, we started off with this conceptual plan, it was conceptual. In there, and it could be that there's I wouldn't recommend to create a PDD out of single family homes. But there it could be part of, that the city has a master plan for this area. In there, the existing properties can stay as is, but in the future, if you assemble to, then, we'd consider the 40-foot or the reduction.
In certain areas.
Yeah, well, and again, 2 things. One is that within the comprehensive plan, the city is looking only in specific areas to increase density that have been identified. So it's not like the city's looking to do it holistically in any way. And then 2 is, yes, in specific areas like along Hilltop, is that something we would consider? And the question goes, well, why there? Why there only? Well, again, it's because of the interchange, the volume of traffic, the signals that you have to deal with, and whether single family use is that really the highest and best use when you're behind Chevy's Opus development and all that. And that was really the question, and where the comprehensive plan looked at it as that's why you need more density. It's an area that's ripe for opportunity to have some density.
I'm intrigued by it. I think there's potential, I have to say.
Yeah, I mean, I certainly would like, and I know it's getting late. Carlos wanted me to, we have been talking about this for quite some time, and obviously I want to get your input. I don't know what would happen in the future as far as a new development platting 40 feet wide lots. I don't think that's not my intent. I don't think that's the intent of the city to lower that. There's just some of these, I look up and down, specifically Hilltop and Collingwood, that they are predominantly 50 feet wide lots, except for these 5. And again, one of them is a 2,000 square foot home. So it's what he would want, what he would have to sell his home for if it's not me. It's not going to be a tear down. It will stay as an existing home. So I think to myself, it's not going to increase the density the way Carlos would like it. I recognize that, but what will continue the same as new homes are built in those 2 streets?
What gets us closer?
Yeah, I just keep stepping back thinking. I quoted a line to Carlos from the movie Argo. I don't know if any of you have seen that movie, but these are all bad ideas. This is my best bad idea. It sounds pretty bad, but that's a good way to start a proposal, isn't it? That's it, Andy, forget it. I just don't want to give up on it. And I'm just, thought I'm not sure what the next step actually is. Maybe
Can I say
Carlos.
one thing? I think that it's only dealing with 9 lots and all that could potentially have outcome from this. And that you're not making the house wider than the existing houses. I think that's a big deal in this stuff too, as well. I think those 2 points make these are oddball kind of cases where it's not gonna affect 3,000 lots. It's gonna affect maybe 9 at the most. And I'd rather have something new and exciting next to the new development than an older elaborated house.
Yeah, and even if we do cool for the 9, to your point saying, okay, if you're gonna rebuild, if it even comes up, gotta keep the width the same.
Oh, yeah, you can't
And
increase, you
stormwater has
can't
to
get,
be accounted for it, whatever we want.
Yeah.
I'm not too flustered on that. I think I'm more, if densities really are concerned, we're losing density, potentially 3 in the end. But again, 3. This wasn't gonna, these wasn't gonna move the needle away. So it's.
Carlos, what was the intent that code change for these small lots anyway? Like what did they think was gonna happen to these when that change was implemented?
I think the goal, the policy goal of the council at that time was to encourage consolidation. For these lots to consolidate, for somebody to tear 2 houses down
Okay,
and combine them and create one home.
okay, so then just like a few of them kind of got missed.
Not necessarily, because there was already some existing in there. And it might have been whether through the analysis is like, hey, if we do 50, we have a good control in there. I was here when we brought the threshold down to 50, because before the policy was if it's anything less than 100-foot width, the city wanted you to consolidate the property. And that would drastically change a lot of character of several neighborhoods that we had. Chevy Chase is a good example. The Hilltop area in there. So council changed its policy and amended it and dropped it down to, in no case should we have any new lot less than 100 feet. We would allow lots less than 100 feet if they meet or exceed the average of the surroundings. And then you could never have anything less than 50. That was going to be the cutoff point. It was just that was the number that was selected in there. At that time, I didn't have the resources we do now to be able to find out that, hey, there's 9 more lots out there, we can,
Right,
we
okay.
can consider something. Not to say that would have been the solution, but it was the point, it was the comfort point that they had that let's keep it at 50 feet.
I just didn't want to miss something. So it's like if we approve something like this, I didn't want to miss like a big concept that, that those decisions were.
Well,
based on.
and again, that was a decision that was put in place in there before the adoption of the strategic plan.
Right.
Now with the plan in place, where it's saying, hey, this is a density opportunity zone, there's still that conflict that's there. And not to say, plans aren't perfect. I mean,
Right.
and in any form or way, but it makes us think about this and whether this is the best, what is the best solution. And I really looked at this, and I don't know if it's the issue of the depth, which, the more I look at it, the more, it's like, man, if I only had the extra 30 feet, I can do something like across the street. We looked at different configurations. How do you get, detached garages, alleys, and meet fire access and all that. And, that strip is much more difficult than dealing with the strip across here. And I'm not sure, is it that? And then the other thing is like, you always kind of think about it, it's like, Mr. Cohen's a developer and his goal is, that's his business. So he's looking for making money in there as his income. It's like, well, how do I make this work? Okay, I'll give you more units, but at some point you get to this threshold that it doesn't matter how many units, you just can't do it. I can throw all these units in there. So what are some other alternatives? Are there, and I don't know, and there were some utility issues that you noted, there's a big easement that runs between the two properties that kind of, that's why you have that single family home on the north side. And such, and then you exceed the MSD threshold. If he adds another home, then he's got to provide on-site detention, a basin. Now that can be above ground or that could be below ground. but it starts adding cost. And if you're not getting more units, you know, you can't fit more units, you're starting to eat on your bottom line. So
I have a question about that too. So how do they define that? What if, you know, he's like, well, this is a separate development, you know, these 3 buildings down here.
they would be individually because they're existing. But I believe in the discussions before, if you consolidate and you exceed the 1 acre, then you have, that's where the MSD threshold kicks in.
Correct. Yeah, Daniel,
Does
that's,
that answer, Daniel?
Yeah, I was just looking for another one. too. Yeah, just trying to understand because it seemed like if it's. Instead of 1 acre, you know, it's 2 developments and then it's. That's what I was.
Yeah, and
saying.
I don't know, I mean, that's.
How do
Saying
you,
if
how
you
do you?
put like
if I,
two different apartment
phase.
building and phase it out, I believe.
Yeah,
Like
yeah,
one-
then
one
what,
an
what's to
acre,
stop somebody
2.
from doing that? That's what I'm wondering. Why?
You're correct. Yeah. So someone could, I would imagine, could do that.
I'm
The
not
pro-
suggesting that. I'm just curious, is there something in there that addresses that issue?
there certainly is a workaround. The problem is, can you get, you know, when I was sort of nearing the point I was a few months ago, you know, I went ahead and reached out to some apartment folks that are more, you know, on the commercial side. And it just came down to, there's just not enough land to fit enough to make it. I know your problems is not an economic feasibility, but to make it work. Because there just isn't a way, you know, you can't go, you know, 60 stories up to make it all work. Where I was at the point, I'm like, you know what, maybe if there's an apartment developer, you know, I'll sell him the land, you know. We ran out of runway with literally what I could get on there. And like Carlos said, maybe the 180 feet across the street versus 125 feet gets you there because you've got more room for an access road for the fire department. You can get, you know, the math didn't lie at that point, and I'm like, what else can I do?
That kind of tells us too, as well, is that you're the developer and you're talking to other developers too, that kind of limits what's gonna come out of, you know, too, as well. I mean, this is probably gonna be a good shot of a good scenario that we have in front of us right now. Where the other ones are not gonna come, I would assume, where no other developers, unless you could find, you know, different kind of a building, which.
All right, I think we've kind of talked this through. I mean,
Yeah.
but I think we kind of understand the issues, concerns.
Okay.
Where do we go from here, Carl?
We'll continue discussions with Mr. Cohen and we'll look further at, you know, if there's consensus in the commission, looking further at reduction of that 50 to 40 feet and what repercussions we can find in that process.
I think new is better. I'm, you know, and again, you need to make money. I'm just trying to think of also creative ways, but you've thought of them already.
I think it'd be good too, if we, you know, have it as a discussion item, maybe for one of the next meetings too. If we get other commission members to kind of weigh in on this as well. Just because we've got a short group, a small group here.
Yeah, I think Richard would probably add some, well, I mean, you know, good, bad, and I think he's gonna add something to it.
Yeah.
Maybe there's some crazy alternative that he has thought of that I haven't. But if that's what you think is the next step, or if you want to, whatever you guys want to do.
I think we. What's that? Yeah, no.
I'd like to make, you know, my best go at it. So if you want me to come back whenever the next meeting is,
Well, let's see how many, I
or
think we should put it on the agenda at least to see if we have. enough attendance.
is there a way to have it on the agenda versus like a discussion item, or?
Kind of like a workshop, yeah, just. kind of- Yeah,
We would have something closer. close to a draft for them to start taking a look at
Okay,
and have that discussion of what are the impacts that could happen. And then if they're ready with that, they can decide if they want to further it at the second meeting.
okay. So you'll just tell me what to do when. That sounds like a good idea. Thank you for your time tonight. I know it's late, so I really do appreciate it.
No, no problem.
Thank you all.
All right, we'll move on to item B, which is 9549 Old Bonham Road subdivision.
Just want to bring to the commission's attention, this will be quick. This is Old Bonham Road. This is Lynn Court. You recall we had a 2-lot subdivision on the west side of Lynn Court where 2 new single-family homes were built. Well, now on the east side, there was a similar lot. At your next meeting, you'll have a petition to subdivide that single-family property and create 2. What allows or authorizes it is, again, the city has a minimum standard for new single-family homes. That is that they should have 100-foot width of frontage, 150-foot depth, and be 15,000 square feet. And if you can carve out that within property, have the accessible frontage and access to that property can be subdivided. And in this case, they configured a configuration where they could get 2 lots out of that one in accordance with what our code ordinances would allow. And that's what you see here. This is looking at it from a infrastructure contour aspect in there and how they would set those 2 lots in place. You'll get more detail about the plat and the process at your next meeting. I just wanted to bring
One of the
it.
curiosities I have is right now that house faces, I walk by it every day, like it faces Old Bonham. It looks like these 2 are face line.
That is
Is that
correct.
an issue? I know sometimes.
Not a code issue. And it's not a guideline issue. It's a,
Aesthetics issue.
yes.
That
remember
corner
After
gets-
Birdie Lane, pretty.
I was gonna say the Birdie Lane things, I remember that argument on Birdie Lane about that,
Yeah,
you know? And
in that corner.
cause that,
Starting
this
to get
on
closer.
9561, like they have the pool right there and then it's interesting, and you look at the side of the house and the pool. I don't know if I care, I'm just thinking it is kind of interesting that we're facing houses away from the.
Well, and there's reasons why. One is, and one of the goals has been, Old Bonham Road is a collector street. It's a residential collector street, and you want to minimize the amount of aprons that are in there. So as properties have redeveloped, we've always tried to, or encouraged the driveway access to be on a side street. And if you're subdividing, it's required by code. You have no choice. So that does alter the configuration of a house. Doesn't say you can't do it. It just, a lot of the times the front door of the house is going to be facing or being, perpendicular to the garage entrance. And in this case, they have the garage entrance to the north, so they're facing east
But you
or
could-
west, excuse
You
me.
could have the front door facing Old Bonham, but the apron still on Lynn possibly is one.
Correct, you can, and that's a design. It's not a code, but it's a
Yeah,
design.
yeah.
The other thing that's been brought to the commission's attention, and also the commission being cognizant that, the properties, existing properties along Old Bonham Road that face Old Bonham Road, especially the older stock, they were designed, they were deep. And they had significant front yard setbacks. As these lots get carved up, and not all of them will, because not all of them will be able to have the access that's necessary. That front yard, that Old Bonham Street yard starts to get reduced, when you were used to seeing the 60, 50-foot setbacks, all of a sudden it becomes, the code allows you to go as low as 25.
That's like
So
Birdie Lane
the
one,
issue
yeah.
goes down to, is it the code? Well, and the commission has the authority and to request a steeper front yard setback. And we did that in Birdie Lane. So we went from 25 to 30. So it's not saying like it's insignificant. And one of them, we went from 25 to 35. As
Can
part of
you
the-
add that it's just on Old Bonham that you get a certain setback?
That is
35
another
feet or whatever it
possibility.
is.
That rule would require an amendment, and if that is, a direction that we want to start looking at,
I can see
we
that.
could.
Especially with the walking to school and the things like the driving, having things tighter and tighter is kind of interesting. it does change the aesthetics.
And here's and this is like, you can never predict what a code change can do. And some that just like we were talking about this 40-foot, going from 50 to 40. The old front yard setback requirements, you had to average the setback of the two houses beside you. And that becomes your front yard setback. And what that started doing was, it was pushing houses further back, in design. And it started impacting the characteristics of internal neighborhoods and subdivision because of that. So what we decided to do is like, hey, well, let's go back and change that the front yard setback would be whatever's in your recorded plat or record, and in no case less than 25 feet. Well, that has kind of led to this configuration. Not to say that the houses wouldn't have gone back, but if the old code section was in play, that setback would be, you probably still could get the two lots, but you'd have a significantly bigger setback. We also started pushing the driveways on the opposite end of the corner in an effort to improve, queuing and things like that. So our goal is always to try to get that side or rear entry garage, and that means you're going to have a 25-foot turnaround in front of that, and space starts to become consolidated. If you had a front entry garage, then it wouldn't matter. You'd be 12 feet from the north property line. You could have a bigger side yard setback. Those are discussions we can have regarding these plats.
And if we did increase the front on just Old Bonham, let's say we increased it by 10, 15 feet, that these lots couldn't work possibly, that they couldn't subdivide this lot.
Ooh,
Would that discourage this going on?
it's possible. I'm not sure.
And I'm not sure if that's what the commission
Mhm.
wants to do. I'm not sure if that's.
I wouldn't
what
say
you
that's the
guys want.
objective, but it probably is an outcome.
But again, if you have the property line here, and here's your side yard setback,
You move it all the way down.
if that house was shifted all the way to the side property line, you would gain an additional 15 feet away from this side if you would allow a front entry garage. Now, there's nothing wrong with a front entry garage. It's just how it's designed. You don't want it to be poking out in front of the house or be the dominant portion of the house.
Yep.
You could design a nice recessed front entry garage. And instead of having that 25-foot driveway turnaround plus the 5-foot setback for the driveway, you can pick up 10, 15 feet.
Yeah, I think in this case, that would be phenomenally better, because right now you've got like two garages facing each other. I think that is horrifically awkward.
Well, and it's a design thing. Again, I'm not sure. The code doesn't say you have to have side entry garages, but there's a lot of expectations out there that you have to
Yeah,
have. a side
where
entry
are
garage.
you seeing that? I can't figure
You
out.
got
what's
skills.
going on. Well, you see, it
Look
looks
at
like we
the
got
contour lines, right?
two curb cuts,
They're right here.
and then the garages would
Oh.
be facing each other. Yeah, I would like to see one either flipped or front entry garages. 'Cause
Yeah.
Let me open the,
Maybe some
I know
advice.
this is all super preliminary.
Yeah.
but-
correct, and that's why I think.
It was just interesting to me because it's in my neighborhood, so that's why I'm very.
Yeah.
but-
Yeah, yeah.
Here we go. And I think you can see the driveway turnarounds here.
Oh, yeah,
And
it's a lot of cement.
yeah, it's a lot of cement. That's exactly
Like-
more pervious surface area.
I don't know, I kind of like the facing of the old bottom. I agree, it's not a code issue, but it just seems. I don't know, it's my view of it.
Yeah, yeah. No, I don't
It's not always
disagree.
doable, but
I think we need to think about pushing the houses away from Old Bonham.
Yeah, I like that.
I think, yeah, I
Keeps the character.
keeps it, and just like what he said, I'm thinking about going down Old Bonham. And the good looking houses, I think, on the street are the ones that set back.
Yeah.
Have a big open yard in the front, and you can see the house, but it's way back there in the yard.
Yeah.
And I think that's, in my opinion, that's where I'd go with it.
well, it's not too many houses when you think about like the total amount, but as soon as but this is gonna be more and more. I'm looking at the one next to it, same thing, they're gonna cut it out, because you can't.
Well, like Carlos was
can't
saying,
they?
if there's
Okay,
access,
they
they'd almost need two lots in order to do it.
But yeah, just. So many big homes. Yeah.
But that's part of this is that they're, taking one big home and making it two.
Right.
I mean,
Right.
it's increasing the density. Kind of,
I know.
kind of both ways in it.
All right.
All right, I think that's a good initial discussion on that. I think we got some good thoughts. Let's move on. Other business, meeting minutes. Carlos, I don't see any.
That's right. There are no meeting minutes that were printed for your review.
Okay, so we'll move on to
That were
reports. Correct?
A couple of things. Don has put together a presentation regarding demographic data that I want to go over with the commission. But given the time, we'll hold that for their meeting in November. It's important for some of the advisory committee members to be cognizant of that. And Don, if you could give me like 3 quick highlights about that. You don't need
Happy to. It's actually, I'm pretty proud of the work that's gone into it. As far as the highlights, breaking everything down, taking as much data as I could get in aggregate on the city of Olivet, and now breaking it down into quadrants, but also, prior to quadrants, breaking down those Olivet-wide numbers down into something that we can easily discern, right? What are the top 3 growing? What are the top, the bottom 3 declining? Get a sense of what our changes are since 2010. Not a whole lot of looking forward. We don't have the tools for, that forward analysis, but to present what is in the community. What we have available right now, or what we use is the US Census, and the most recent available information is the 2025 year estimates from the ACS. And of course, we have the 2020 decennial census. Decennial census is the official count, and that is very limited information. And Carlos is like, you are just starting your whole presentation from the beginning.
3 things that are
Well, I would say salient details is a growing median age for females, possibly weighted down by a sizable female 85 and older population. And then the prevalence of, or I should say, not a decline of professionals, those age groups held in very well. However, there's a specific rise in the children. So it seems to have pivoted from 2010, almost solidly professionals, 30 to 49. And then now we're seeing 5 to 9 and 10 to 14 as the highest percentage of age, or highest percentage age groups. And we have a very large population, which we already discussed about, a quarter of Olivet citizens do not speak English as their first language. That is something that it will likely, impact the way we present our services. We want to reach out to the biggest, or the largest population that we can. We want to be as accessible as we can. So we're trying to frame, we're trying to use the numbers to frame our actions. I think that's
other items, again, remember Harvest Festival this weekend's been changed over to the Stacy Park. There's a drug take back day, Saturday, October 29th. Don't forget about Turkey Trot coming November 24th. Registration is open. The city's posted the fall leaf schedule online. It begins the first week of November. In there, the parks, everything is going smoothly. A majority of the parks, I believe, have been open or now accessible to the public. great improvements if you get the opportunity to take a look at. The major structures, the community center, the parks maintenance building, those are gonna take longer for a variety of reasons than what the schedules initially thought, but they're moving along. Last thing I wanted to kind of talk about, I always, am cognizant of what we're doing and how it impacts and concerns. So these are, and we'll go over these at the next meeting, pictures of Olive Crossing, specifically looking at that buffer and what that impact and how it's shaping around. Learn from the process and see if there's opportunities to improve. We did the same thing with the Oliver for the most part, and this is right before the peak of the fall season, which is going on now. But things were holding up pretty well. Buffers were pretty well in line in there. There are areas where, you could find, you could see right around here where one of the newer homes kind of clear cut all that back area, and now it's a little bit more visible, but it seems to be holding okay. Eventually, you're going to get another wall, a buffer wall that's going to be on this top portion in there. And I tried to get up on the higher floors to get a good look at what we're seeing into there. And over time, we'll start looking at the other side. What are they seeing out of there in there? But just to keep the commission informed. Also, so we have a collection to compare to, in a month or two, in a couple of weeks or a month from now, if the tree foliage is all gone, what were those impacts, and how can we make it better? That's the goal.
Good.
All right, sweet. That's all I have, Chairman.
All right, Missy.
I don't have much. I hope to see you Saturday at Stacy Park for the Harvest Festival. I will be in costume.
Oh, Carlos, yeah, can you
I
leave this up
can't
after
tell you
business
that.
time?
I will be in costume, but I can't tell you what. Again, Carlos does a great job with regards to summaries of things. 9th year of Turkey Trot. We've got some good stuff in green this year, Olivet Green. I've been waiting for a Turkey Trot, Olivet Green Turkey Trot shirt for 9 years. And it's here. So, it's all good. Appreciate you all. Appreciate the conversation, and just be safe, and let me see you Saturday.
All right, great. Carlos, you got something else here?
Oh, so the pages that were just up are, it seemed for a while that citizens were struggling with finding special notifications. So I made up a little cheat sheet, if you will, that shows you the multiple locations that you can sign up for, getting push notifications to your phone, your email, and where it is located on our website. I've been impressed really with the way the city conducts themselves online, with the opportunities that we have for outreach. I found out about this job because I had signed up for it. And that's, I don't know, that's the best endorsement I can give of a notification ever.
These cheat sheets would be good in newsletter.
I would be happy
I-
to.
Is this going in our system right now where it kind of like it's a flowing, moving kind of look at?
Oh, that is a screen cap with words that I put on over top of it.
Okay.
But
okay.
it's just a
Yeah.
graphic. Let's say it was partly born out of frustration because I feel like we have a lot of opportunities to connect with the city. And, showing where they were, it just seemed like for a while there, it really seemed like people were struggling. But there's also a lot of expectations that go along with that.
I would get those phone calls too, and I'm like, well, it's on our website. Well, I've been looking at our website. Where? I end up going and finding it, clicking the link, and then I just send them the link, and.
Can't tell you how much,
that would be good.
that happens.
Yeah. And with what we heard tonight, people are still saying the wonderful electronic push that we've been doing for years is still insufficient. So, use old and new yard signs and technology.
Exactly. All right. Seeing no further discussion, we're going to adjourn the meeting at 9:43. Thanks.
Thank you for leaving.